Hello and welcome to today's Four-Piece Podcast. I am your host, Trunnis Goggins, and today we have a guest on our program that she has a book coming out. It'll be out here in the next couple days. It's called The Lie That Named Me. It is by Millie Etherton, and this is a book that deals with her experiences in the foster care system. It's a great book because of when you see her interview and you see how she is today, you're going to realize that there is a lot of hope. There really is, and you're going to love her as a person. The podcast interview is going to give you a lot of insight. As a matter of fact, you gave me a lot as well, and I'll tell you on the other end of this program. We'll be right back right after this.
Purpose gives your life direction. Planning turns that direction into action. Passion gives your mission energy. Persistence keeps you moving when the road gets hard. The 4 Ps of You is more than a book. It is a framework for building a life with meaning, focus, and follow through. Discover your purpose. Create your plan. Fuel it with passion. Finish with persistence. The 4 Ps of You by Trunnis Goggins II. Available wherever books are sold.
Welcome back to the Four-Piece Podcast. Like I told you last week, and I told you in the very beginning of this program, we have a phenomenal guest today. Her name is Millie Etherton. She is, I think, I am going back. We've had a lot of episodes. We've had over 112 episodes so far. And I think you are the first one from Arizona. So you really are. I think you are. I'm going back. I don't remember ever having anybody from Arizona. Welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Trunnis. Thanks for asking.
Well, I am glad you're doing well. First of all, I want to say that your book that you wrote, I am so privileged that I got to read it first. And or one of the first. I shouldn't say got to read it first. I'm sure other people have read it first. But what I am amazed is that after reading your story, I'm amazed at what you are today and what you do today. And the sense of like every time I talk to you, I mean, I leave the conversation a happier person. I really do. You have a quality about you that's very joyful. Um, First of all, I want to know before we even get into the story, what makes you have that quality about you? What that positive quality?
I just, for me to have a positive quality, honestly, it's a choice. So I can either choose to be ungrateful, bitter, angry, but I choose to just look at the positives and just where I am going and
Right.
what I can do to make somebody else smile or love on someone for the day.
That is beautiful. You know, and you're a caring person, and even in your job, the profession that you pick,
hmm
you do some, you're always there to help others. Has that quality always been there for you?
Um, I would say yes and no. So, um, I've always been a very caring, nurturing person. I feel like that was just kind of part as you get to know me and read my story, being the oldest, you kind of I feel like are already in that predisposition of wanting to be nurturing and caring for other
Right.
people. But there are times where enough is enough and you just wake up and you don't want to give your all. You're just angry, you're bitter, you get tired, you're exhausted of taking care of other people. So it's a yes and a no question or
Okay,
answer.
very good. Yes, yes, absolutely. And now you are talking now. A lot of people are like, "What are you talking about?" If you
Mhm.
hear my story, what is the name of your book?
Yeah, the name of my book is The Lie That Named Me.
Okay, and what is it about?
It's about me. It's about my story. It's about just feeling unwanted, unworthy, unfixable. My journey um of living in foster care, my journey of healing. That's where I am now. My struggles still currently to this day. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's about.
Wow. And so you were you talked about foster care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't want to really share too much of the book, all
Correct.
right? But I do want to share a lot about foster care in general.
Mm-hmm.
When people think, I'm going to be just blunt,
Mm-hmm.
when people talk, and I'm not talking about people who are in the foster care system. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about people who how people view the foster care
Perceive.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, perceive it. And so we have individuals who are, like, oh, wow, that's a foster kid, that might be bad news, or don't
Mm-hmm.
hang around because they're not going to be around for a long time. Is that stuff still go on, or is that type of lack of connection, does that still happen?
Absolutely. I think that people need to understand that there is a difference. I mean, there's many different type of placements that happen, right? So you have foster care isn't just like foster care of you being with foster parents. There's kinship placements, there's guardians, there's group homes, there's shelters. So it's many different type of placements, and unfortunately, yes, we are, especially older kids, like I would say probably around 13ish,
Hmm.
11ish and up, we're labeled, we're misunderstood, we're the problem children, we're traumatized, we're damaged, we are never going to heal, we're going to be the next ones that are going to be homeless, we're going to be living on the streets, we're going to be doing drugs, we're going to be, hurting somebody. So yeah, that still does happen.
And so, and you talk about like 13. That is a magic number.
Hmm.
Um, and why is that such a transitional time for kids in foster care?
I feel like a lot of it's just more because, we're turning into teenagers, we're no longer the pre-adolescents. And I do think that foster youth specifically, when we turn 13, we're less likely to be adopted. We're less likely to have that family environment. I don't honestly know why people think that,
Mm.
just because we're a teenager or a youth, that we don't deserve to be adopted or we don't deserve to be put into a family. But I do think a lot of it is when people like you or I or anybody else go through the system and they go through the trainings and they say, hey, say Trunnis, hey, you were like, hey, I want to become a foster parent, right? And so say you already have children in your home.
Mhm.
So you have children, maybe ages 6, maybe 8, maybe 10. And then, a 13-year-old comes along and you're like, hey, or even a 16-year-old, and you're like, hey, I really want to connect with this kid and I really want to bring them in and give them that family and that survival. Well, there's a lot of stigma and a lot of it is taught that, you don't want to mess up birth order. So if you already have children in your home and your oldest child is 10 or 11 years old, that they strongly recommend against it. And they oftentimes don't even approve
Wow.
those placements. So because
Okay.
you're messing up birth order. And so I personally don't, I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, I myself have my own personal experience. So I did end up kind of messing up birth order in my home and taking in a child that was older than my birth oldest child. And yes, it does have its challenges and yes, it does have its struggles. However, it's been a beautiful journey. And I was one that said I would never, ever do this, just due to my own experiences. So
Right.
there, I don't think birth order should matter. I think that every child deserves a home. And I do think that the stigma around that is because we are labeled the problem child. We have behavioral health needs. The more we're going to need medications, we're going to need more services, we're going to need more interventions, we're going to have a lot more crises, we're going to run away, whatever it may be. So I don't understand why. that is like
Okay.
that, but I do understand why they teach that and train people that way.
Now you and I was just sitting there thinking while you were answering that question, you would probably be the best foster parent to have because you went through what I mean, because like for example, me, I wasn't ever a foster child.
Hmm.
So, me raising a kid, I'm gonna think, okay, listen, this is the way it used to be in my house, this is the way it is. Here are the rules. If you don't follow them, this is
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. We're done. You understand?
Hmm.
And so, but you, on the other hand, you come in saying that this child is going through this, going through that, does not feel the love that they deserve to feel. They need to feel that love. They are probably lost, they're scared, they're all these different things. So you would be the idea foster parent. And you just said this wonderful journey. How long have you been with this foster? How long have you and the foster child been together?
So she came to us when she was about 13 years old, actually.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's going to be 19. So we've had her for
So,
we've had her for a little while. And I didn't just to clarify, I mean, I didn't go through the classes. I didn't become a foster parent. It was kind of a unique situation. But at the end of the day, it wasn't always easy. And I did have to kind of parent her from a place of not trauma and my own experiences. And I had to always
mm,
be very cautious of that. Am I giving her what she needs from the right place, or am I giving her, or is this like my own trauma? And I do through the journey and through her being in our home, and we do consider her our daughter. Um,
right.
it was really hard. There was a lot of times where it was like, oh my gosh, this just you remind me of me in so many ways. Like, snap out of it. And I have to, not have to, but I had to really be cautious of the words and the language and the verbiage I gave to her, because
Absolutely.
a lot of times, and I do address this sort of in my book without giving too much away. A lot of times we just say, just get over it. You need to just get over it. Like, just move on. You're fine. And I just don't think that people understand how hard that is for a family member who has been completely abandoned by their family. Like, you don't just get over it. I mean, we're rooted in our roots for a reason. There's a reason why,
Right.
even if you're adopted as a baby, you come back later in life and you want to know who your parents are, where you came from, your history. Our roots are our roots. So it's not easy to just say, get over it. So I had to be very patient and I had to be very cautious of how I parented her and where I parented
Right.
her from the place. Yeah.
And so you are, you, and again, you're coming from this angle. You have kids, you have a family.
Hmm.
You just stated that you're the oldest, and so you had to take on. So you have younger siblings, I take it,
Correct.
right? Were
Correct.
you guys, and this is going to be a question again, I know that the book is coming out and what have you, but this is a question that if you don't want to answer right off the bat, you don't have to. But I just for context, when you were out, were they all, first of all, were they your full siblings? That's the first question. And the second
Um,
question is,
okay.
go ahead.
No, go
No,
ahead.
oh no, go ahead. All right. And the second question is, when you went into the foster system, were you always together?
Okay. So when I was younger, so I don't want to give away too much of my story because
Right.
there's some pieces in there that you'll see and understand. Um, as far as full siblings go, I don't I was raised to believe that I was the oldest of five children. Um, if you read my story, you'll find out that that changes later on in my life. Um, and no, we weren't always together. So I was taken away when I was about 4 years old. So 4 to 7, I actually lived in an actual foster home, and I was with one sibling, one younger sister. And we would have visits with the other two siblings. My youngest sibling wasn't born at the time. And then when I was about 13, almost 14-ish, I was taken away again. And then we spent the rest of our time in what you would call not even foster homes, but foster homes is more of like that mom dad kind of placement, and then we got thrown into like group homes and shelters. So you kind of just bounce around from place to place to place to place until you age out from 13 to 18, which is really challenging and crucial years of our development and our life and our identity making, right? So at that time, at first, no, we weren't together. And then there was a time where we were placed together. And then during that time, they did decide that we were, I don't remember the exact word at the time, but like we were kind of feeding off each other and being quote unquote bad children because we were together. And so it was a very short lived experience of being together in that moment. And then we were just kind of all separated for the rest of time. So it wasn't even, I would say, maybe 2-3 months. So yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how's the relationship with you and your siblings now?
I don't really have a relationship with any of my siblings except for one. I'm very close to one of my one of my younger sisters. I don't really have a relationship with any of my other siblings, to be honest.
Very, and that is sad, and it's funny because a lot of people, it's not funny, it's actually not funny at all.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will talk about foster children and how it's their fault, and it's not. It is absolutely 1000%
Yeah.
the fault of the decisions that were made by their caregivers, their parents mostly. And then even the way that they're set up. It's like, for example, military people who are in the military for a long period of time, it takes them a long time to do exactly what I did back here with pictures. They don't hang them up, because they don't know how long they're going to be where they're going to be. Has that been a problem with you?
I think it's hard. I think that if I could get one message out in the world that could create some sort of change, I do think that, we don't age out of trauma. And I think that the system puts a timeline on, hey, you can have services up until you're 25. You can go to college for free until you're 25. But then they just they just drop us off. They say, okay, well, you're 25, you're good. When studies show that our frontal lobe of our brain, especially a female, isn't fully developed until you're 25 years of age anyway. So they're already expecting us to know what we want to do with our lives, but plan from a chaos situation of being thrown from place to place to place to place, from 18 to 25. Hey, go to college, you can go for free. And then at 25, you're done. Like that's it. You have no supports, you have no services, you're kind of on your own. And then we wonder why there's so much homelessness. We wonder why 1 in 4 people in our prison systems have been through the foster care system that are in prison. We wonder why, drugs are a huge thing. We wonder why, our hospitals are holding so many SIs and 5150s. I mean, I do think that, for me personally, yeah, it is hard. It's something that never, ever really truly goes away. No matter how old you get, that loneliness of not being able to pick up a phone and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I am struggling right now. I can't buy food for my family. And, or, hey, how do I navigate getting a car loan? Or, hey, what do I do right now because my child is really sick and I just don't know how to comfort them, or they're really hurting. There's a huge loneliness. There's a huge void that we face and that we go through the rest of our lives. We don't have those accesses to those services. And so I'm not saying that the services that aren't there aren't great. However, it needs to be more about continuity and a lifelong thing. It's a lifelong, struggle that we face and that we go through.
You bring up things that you brought up a couple of things that we take for granted. Your parents are there, and you brought something up that I did not. And again, like I said, I'm not a foster kid, but when you brought that up, I'm like, doggone it, man. I was like, I never thought of that. You're right. I'm thinking about when I was a kid, 16, 17, 18 years old, the things that my parents did for me to make sure that I was getting established and becoming that person. And then I was able to take that stuff at 16, 17 years old and do it with my 16, 17-year-old kids. Because why? Because that's what I saw. That was the model that I got. You
Correct.
don't have that,
We have no
and you didn't.
foundation. Nope.
Nothing to even, you don't have a foundation. You don't even have a guidebook, a manual that
Correct.
your parents leave before you to get. And so now they expect you, like you said, the society expects, like, now when you're going to have kids, which, you 1 in 4 people are 1 in 4 people who are in the penal system are came from foster care. On the same note, how many of them have children of their own? And they
Yep.
do not have a blueprint,
Correct.
and all those little things. And there's also certain traditions. You're literally starting from ground zero
Correct.
and building a foundation, and hopefully building a foundation. You have done that. You have done that successfully. And that's one thing that I admire so much about you. And I'm glad you're going to share that in the book, and we'll talk about that in the book. There's something else that you do. I Stay. What is that all about?
So that was inspired from when I was old enough to kind of understand my trauma, understand what was happening, what was going on. So I will share this. I do talk about it in my book, but I will share this part of the journey. So when I was about, how old was I? Probably in my late 20s, like 28, 29-ish. I had decided, so I was very active in church, and I don't think people in the faith-based community really truly understand even how hard that is as somebody not having a foundation or a family walking into church, especially around holidays,
Oh,
and
yeah.
major events. You're watching all these other families together and children laughing and just being there, like how hard it really is. And also another thing that, is also really hard for me is I touch on this just a little tiny bit is, I as people of faith, just people in general too, whenever there's like a hard time, like I could come to you, Trunnis, and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time with this in my life. And you would probably be there for me in a heartbeat and say, hey, let me talk to you. Let me pray with you. Let me mentor you. But as soon as crises are over, it's like everybody disappears. And that's how it feels a lot of times, like, and I see it happen over and over again. So when I was in my late 20s, I had an instance where things were just really crazy. I think that everything of my life finally caught up to me, and my brain finally was like, hey, you need to get some help. You need to do some therapy. So when I was in the system, I was really good at being the good kid, the quiet kid, the compliant kid. I wasn't going to get in trouble. I mean, when I lived at home, if I did anything wrong, I was beaten, And so I just knew that I was traumatized. I just didn't know if a stranger was going to do the same thing to me or not. So I was very good at observing and watching. So I watched the kids that, had a lot of behavioral outbursts. I watched what they did. I watched the medications that they poured into them. I listened to conversations about how they got paid more money because they had a diagnosis or they needed more services and more treatment. I watched how a particular place of mine turned into a home for teenage pregnant girls, and I didn't fit in that mold, so I got put in another placement because they were getting paid more money, because they now have these mothers that have these babies. So I always was an observer. I always watched kind of my surroundings and what was going on around me. And so when I was in my late 20s, an incident had happened where I had a lot of questions just about my life, about things in general. And so I went to, and I don't recommend people doing this, but I went to the courthouse and I decided to look up my case and look up documents, and things to just kind of feel some answers, feel some questions. And when I went through all of that, it hurt me really bad on a very deep level, because what I had realized was I was never really told the never told the full truth of like the prosecution phases and what had happened. And for me, I had my own personal agenda, meaning we wouldn't have been taken away if I would have known things went the way that they went, if that makes sense, without going into too much detail.
Okay.
So, I kind of lost it, and I just decided like, hey, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I just don't want to live. Like, I'm just tired of, being good got me nowhere. Being the compliant kid got me nowhere. talking to people and praying with people, they leave you anyway. They don't ever say, they're not consistent in your life of following up and seeing how you're doing, even if there's no crisis at all. Just a simple,
Right.
hi, how are you? I'm thinking of you. And at the time I had two little girls, and then I had my husband, and I was just like, it just was so much. Like, there was just so much going on in my life. I was struggling with just like my marriage and how to have a healthy marriage and those boundaries. I was struggling with just being a parent, being a mom, working full time, going to college full time, just trying to juggle all these things, feeling like I had no help. I had nobody there. So I just decided, hey, I was going to be done. And so I showed up to my therapist's office and I was sitting in therapy with my therapist, and she had asked me a question, and she said, so Millie, she said, what do you want to live for? Like, do you want to live, or do you like not want to live? Which is, the traditional therapy way of saying, hey, do we need to put you inpatient, or do we need to are you okay to be on your own? Well, with my history of, self-harm and all those other things, she decided at the time that, I looked at her and I said, I really don't have a reason to live. Like, there's no reason for me to be here. I'm good. I would be okay if I just checked out right now, kind of a thing. So that didn't go over very well. I ended up being put inpatient in a hospital, to obviously for my own safety, to get the help that I needed. And in that moment, after a couple days of being there, I realized that I was so good at keeping my life so busy. So I would have no quiet, because if I had quiet, then I would just spin in my head, right? So I would think about everything 24/7. I mean, my brain just never would stop. So through that time, I had some time to process, and I realized that even though I was laying in my bed and it was very quiet, and I specifically, with my faith, see myself walking as a little girl, just walking. And I was like, and then my adult self, reach up to grab. And I was like, oh, and I hear the word choice. And I was like, okay, so I have a choice. I can either choose to stay, or I can choose to leave. So I can choose to stay to show up to heal that little girl that had nobody else show up for her, and then do that for myself. And then I can pass that on to my children, right? So I had two little girls at the time. So that's kind of where that came from. So I didn't expect that I would be the one that would have to show up for myself and heal myself and pull myself back. But it's a very true concept. Like, there's nobody else in this world or in this life that can do your work for you. And when you go through therapy, they teach you all those things, and they teach you the nervous system and trauma responses, and they teach you about healing your inner child. So we talk a lot about that in my book also. So I chose to stay. I chose me. And that's kind of where that came from.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you dropped a lot of knowledge there, even for people
Mm-hmm.
who are not, foster kids, even for people who have gone through different things, a lot of things that you can heal, you have to do a lot of that stuff you got to do on your own.
Yeah.
Um, and that is, it doesn't matter who it is. There's a lot of that stuff that you have to do on your own. And I'm so glad you brought that up. Millie, your book again is called The Lie That Named Me.
Mm-hmm.
It is, again, I will tell you right now, your story. And since you know her a little bit over this 30-minute interview, you will know that this person, she's a beautiful person. She really is, inside and out. And she doesn't have to be. That's the thing. She actually has an out. She can actually be, I know people have gone through far less than what she has done, and they're just as bitter can be. But not Millie. Great to have you on the program. Like I said, her book comes out 2 days from today.
So
And
exciting.
make sure you get that. It is going to be May 29th, 2026. It will be live. It's going to be everywhere. Don't worry. Please get it. And you can pre-order right now if you want. If you want to get a jump on it, please do that. Again, great story to read, especially for summer reading now since the summer started. It is a good story, and it's also something, not only is it for foster parents, so to speak, and not only is it for the foster system. We talk about that a lot in that book, or she talks about that a lot in the book. It's for families in general.
Correct.
One thing I want you to know, and especially for younger parents, older parents, every decision you make as a parent affects someone else a hell of a lot longer than it's going to affect you. I just want you to know that. I know that right now at 55, I mean, I am going to outlive the rest of my children. That is my prayer, that I outlive the rest of my children. Now, with that being said, if I make a decision right now that has something to do with them, they have to live with it a lot longer than I do. I don't have as much time on this earth as they do, and I have to live with that, or they have to live with it, not me. And so remember that. And this is a great book to know, because there's a lot of decisions that were made in Millie's life that weren't made by Millie.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I think the important thing, Trunnis, is that, I love what you say there, because it's really true. Like, when we leave this earth, we're not leaving, to heaven. If that's, what you believe in, we're not leaving there with, our cars, our houses, our TVs, any of our material stuff, right? We're leaving there just ourselves, right? But we leave behind, and this is truly how I have defined legacy, is those morals, those values, that's what we leave behind, right? Because that follows down generations to come. That foundation that I was never given. And I think the important thing too is I just want to share with people that my book isn't written from a place of re-traumatizing people. I don't want to re-traumatize people. I didn't share a lot of very specific details of the trauma and the things that I went through. I really tried to be more, hey, this is what happened and this is how I overcame certain situations, and to really bring some awareness around it. It's for those caseworkers, social workers who work in the system, who work with those kids. It's for those foster parents, guardian ad litem, our grandparents, so many grandparents that I know that are raising their children, and it just breaks my heart. But and I know how hard it is. It's for our grandparents, it's for our schools, our school teachers, our counselors, our therapists, and pretty much a lot of families that have broken families. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, there's so much in here that I try to give a little nugget to every single person in that way.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of person you are. You always want to give. Great heart, great heart. Millie, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Look forward to your book, and I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. We will be right back right after this.
She was told who she was. She was told where she belonged. She was told to stay quiet. But years later, everything she believed about her name, her family, and her story began to unravel.
The Lie That Named Me, available now.
Welcome back to the 4Ps Podcast, our final segment of the 4Ps Podcast. I always say, I hope you enjoyed the interview and stuff like that. I know that you got something out of this interview. I know I got something out of it. One thing I got out of it as a parent, and one thing I got out of it as a person, is the fact that, what our parents are as far as our guidance to be parents ourselves. I know that a lot of things I learned, if you look at my book, Lessons from My Father, you'll see that a lot of things I learned were from my mother and father. I learned what to do. I learned what not to do from that experience growing up. I knew that things were going to change. I knew how things were going to change. I knew some things needed to stay the same. And that's what I did. And you know what? That's what every single parent does, is they try to stop or start a cycle when it comes to parenting. However, in the foster care system, sometimes these individuals come out of the foster care system with absolutely no foundation when it comes to raising a family of their own. A lot of those individuals have families of their own. And then you wonder why there's another cycle that starts. And that's why, by the grace of God, literally by the grace of God, Millie has done things to stop a cycle, and then she has actually gone to help um, other foster kids. She talked about her daughter in that interview, who again was a part of the foster care system and now is very much a part of the Etherton family, and that is a beautiful thing. Um, we have to really give that foster care, eat foster children for especially, we got to cut them a break. Um, they are already going through a lot of hell. And then we add a lot of hell by putting stigmas and this, that, and the other on them. We see stories in the news quite often about the foster care system. Not all of it's great. And we're failing a lot of children in that process, and we need to definitely do a better job of being there for people who are in foster care. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Definitely get the book, The Lie That Named Me. It is, again, it's a book that will bring you to tears. There's absolutely not a doubt about it. It is a very important book, and it's a book that, again, I highly recommend that you read that book, you get that book, you share that book with others, and you reevaluate and go to your local. I'm not trying to advocate things politically, but go to your local elected official and talk to them. Like, hey, dude, what can we do to fix it, or do that? Whatever. What can we do to fix this? There is a problem in the foster care system. We need to fix it. And we need to have more people like Millie. Of course, the route that she took to get there may not be, the best route in the world to take. Next week, we are going to talk about your health, especially if you're a woman. We're going to be talking to Cynthia A. Ray. She has a couple books out. One is called the 21 Day Sugar Detox. And we're going to talk about that. She is a nutritionist. She has a master's degree, and she wants to make sure you are healthy. And so we'll be talking to her next week. We are staying in the United States. This is, we're going to be staying here for a little bit. So there you go. We will talk to you next week. And until then, have a great week. Goodbye.